What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the You Know Ball Podcast. I am your host, Trill Bro Dude, and who would have thought after the last episode we recorded that we would be sitting here with the Celtics and Heat still going. Sam Celtics winning 2 straight games, finally figuring out how to defeat the Devil Magic Heat, at least in some capacity. So on our higher lower today for the Underdog Pick'em section, our sponsors at Underdog Fantasy use the promo code SLOP to get a $100 deposit match. There are options on here for this. And Sam, your last pick when you were in the doomer mode after the Celtics went down 0-3 actually hit when you picked Gabe Vincent higher points, Max Strus higher points, and then Grant Williams for the Celtics, which originally you were going to say lower, but the points were 4.5. So you were like,
they were too low.
You were like, it's too low.
Yeah.
Obviously, he's going to hit that. And he did. He hit higher on his points. So let's pick some for Game 6, which is tomorrow night. We're recording this on Friday. And we have...
My instinct is to go to Jimmy immediately because this game screams Jimmy Butler, just Jimmy Butler thing.
Well, he needs to. Because if not, it's very much like that Steph Curry situation where we were like, well, if Steph doesn't score 29 points, like Jimmy's higher or lower right now is 28.5. They're losing because him not being the guy the last 2 games like he was in the first 3 games has been a huge swing in this series so far. So I would say definitely higher on Jimmy. Is there anyone else on there? Or?
I would go higher on Jimmy's blocks and steals. I just saw that was 2.5. I feel like he's definitely getting that.
More so than the points because you can only do 1.
Yeah, I'm definitely more so than the points. I think that's going to be – I think Jimmy's going to be, in fact, kind of selling out because they kind of need to turn the Celtics over.
Yes.
And I think that, even – he might not – if the Celtics defense is locked in, Jimmy can still have bad nights. Sure. But I think he will be very much in free safety Jimmy Butler mode, like just trying to create steals. And I think he's going to get at least a few.
And he's probably going to have to play 45 minutes in this game. He's going to be going balls to the wall. Yeah. This is Miami's best chance. And then as far as the Celtics go, are we thinking Derek White keeps up the hot streak? Tatum's been incredible as a playmaker in the last 2 games.
I was just going to say, I feel like Jason Tatum has kind of figured some stuff out. I think he 46 points, rebounds, assists. I kind of like the higher on that for the 7 points, rebounds, assists. So
to put it in perspective, Bill has been talking about the fact that Tatum is averaging over 42 in this run in terms of points, rebounds, assists. So that's a good sign right there. If you put $10 on that, on Underdog today, you can win $30 as your payout. Sign up with the promo code SLOP and get ready for possibly Sam's nightmare, possibly Sam's dream in these next few games.
We'll talk about it a little more in the Patreon part, but we're not to nightmare yet. No. If the Celtics, honestly, I'm pretty zen right now about Game 6. I'll be disappointed if the Celtics lose, but it's okay. They avoided the worst case scenario. Joe Mazzulla talked to dying teenagers and realized that he's coach of the year. There's something to build from now. It's not like a disaster class the way it would be. If they lose in Game 7, I'm going to want it too bad. I want it so bad. This is still far enough away. They're still at home that I'll be what are you going to do? You shot yourself in the foot. That sucks, but I already did my morning after Game 3. It is kind of all gravy right now, which is.
I was going to say it's been the last 2 games have been house money because you thought you were thinking sweep or gentleman sweep, and now you're in the situation that the Toronto Raptors were in last year when they were playing the Sixers, where you go down now 0-3. Any games that you win from that point on it's all upside. Yeah. Except the difference is that I think it's pretty clear the Celtics are the better team. So the fact that they actually have a real opportunity, there are more stakes here. As opposed to the large majority of these series, it's almost usually an underdog that has no chance of coming back.
Yeah, the psychic damage. We'll talk about it more later. We'll get to our maximization portion of the program first. But yeah, I'll give exactly my thoughts on the Celtics and how I feel going into Game 6 here.
All right, so we'll do that during the Patreon part, but during the free section of this podcast, I want to talk about Tyrese Maxey and what everything that the Sixers do this offseason, what it means for him moving forward. Because right now, Maxey is kind of the swing piece for the Sixers. Like, from everything we understand that has come out this week, if I am to believe the Sixers are not giving James Harden a max, every report, including Keith Pompey, who said people were laughing at him in Chicago when he even suggested that James Harden could come back when he was at the draft combine, when everything we've heard from, I've heard people saying it from the Houston side, I've heard people suggest it from the Philly side. We've heard from everywhere at this point that James Harden is probably gone. And then I think the Sixers are starting to look at different options in order to replace him, because they realize that this reality is probably going to happen. Now, I'm not reporting that, but we've heard some things, and people have put some things out there that kind of suggest that in general. So the thought here is, how does the team move forward with Tyrese Maxey as the lead guard? Because if Harden's gone, Maxey's role is going to step up in terms of minutes, in terms of on-ball opportunities, in terms of initiating possessions, and all the things that you want out of your young guard. The thing so far in Maxey's career has been he's a very low turnover player. He's a very efficient player, which is why analytics like EPM see him as one of the best young players in the NBA. But he also has never been generating high-level offense for himself and others. And that's something that we're going to see this year, whether it is a system that's built around Joel Embiid with a new coach, with Maxey kind of working more as an off-ball guy. I think he'll be running more pick and roll. I think he'll be running more dribble handoffs with Joel and just really initiating a lot more offense in general. But I got this from the shout out to NBA Couchside who sent me these stats from pbpstats.com, which is a great website. Maxey's stats without Harden per 75 possessions this year were 27.3 points per 75 on 1% better than league average true shooting, which is really impressive for a guy who is an efficient player as it is, and his efficiency barely dips when he's not playing with James Harden. His assists are also up. He's at 6 per 75 in terms of assists. And if you look at the list of guys in the NBA that average 27 points a game on above league average true shooting, or per 75, I should say, and 6 assists, it's basically all NBA players and all-stars. There isn't a single player on the list that hasn't made an all-NBA team or an all-star team except for Jalen Brunson, who probably should have made one of them this year if we're being honest. Like, he was incredible. So the question becomes, what does it look like when you're trying to build an offense around Joel Embiid and Tyrese Maxey, and what do you want his backcourt mate to be now that James Harden is gone? Do you want it to be a D'Anthony Melton type who's more of a spot-up shooter and a third, fourth ball handler in a starting lineup? Do you want it to be more of a pass-first point guard, like a older Chris Paul or Mike Conley or someone like that? I have a few ideas written down here, and I wanted to get your thoughts on like what you think, how Maxey could basically be best maximized and who would pair nicely with him in the backcourt. Because the Sixers, unless they think D'Anthony Melton is just going to step up and be a starter, they're going to have to find someone, whether it's via free agency, via trade, or something like that this offseason. And I have a few ideas here, but I wanted to get your thoughts on who do you think would pair nicely with Maxey in the backcourt.
I mean, so when I think of Tyrese Maxey, you tell me, because I am obviously not a Sixers fan. I don't watch them anywhere near as much as you. I think of a player that really flourishes on grab and goes in transition.
Yep.
I think of a straight line drive attacker. I think of a great spot up shooter. So all of those things are a little bit they're not necessarily something that's created for you, right? Like it's not something that you can kind of summon out of thin air a lot of the time. Like, so I do think, obviously Joel Embiid will be on the roster next year, and you can kind of use that as sort of the fulcrum for what you're creating. But, when we're talking about Maxey kind of stepping into the true second banana role, the Jaylen Brown role, kind of buoying these lineups when Embiid's on the bench. I feel like, I don't think there's necessarily like a right answer necessarily, because I think Maxey's going to have to learn on the fly, like a lot of these different types of, players that he can play with. But I feel like creation is going to be a huge part of that. And I feel like like all players, I feel like surrounding him with spot up shooting and kind of getting him into kind of making the next phase of his development, learning to attack mismatches and then find open shooters once you've drawn two or collapse the defense, is the most basic, the most useful, and the most clear next step. So I would be looking for guys like that who can, complement him a little bit, maybe hide some of his defensive efficiencies on the other end, but are still able to spot up 3-point shoot. The problem is that is literally the most valuable player in the NBA.
It's so funny because I have been saying the same thing. It's like, all you need to do is have a guy who can, make a ton of open threes, who can, create his own shot and create for others, and also isn't a total sieve on defense. And it's like, oh, well, that's like a max player almost at this point. Like it's like it's very hard to find those kind of guys, and that's something that I've been kind of, because I had a Sixers fan ask me, what do you think the team will look like without James Harden? And I said, they'll be worse on offense during the regular season, because Harden, even with all of his flaws, is still one of the best playmakers in the NBA. And if you don't have one of the best playmakers in the NBA, it's really tough to have a top level offense. Like you basically have to have what the Celtics did, which is having more of, an egalitarian style ball movement system predicated on drive and kicks with a bunch of high field players around them. And it's funny, you said Maxey moving into the Jaylen Brown role. And I was thinking, Jaylen Brown, Jamal Murray, Gabe Vincent, that kind of guy.
Yeah. The guys that are clearly the second best person on their team.
Most important, at least.
Yeah.
After last night, that's what I'm thinking. So I have a list here of guys that I think that could kind of meet the criteria in one way or another. Now, Melton, I like Melton a lot. I think that Melton, my whole thing with D'Anthony Melton has always been, I think he's less of a guard and more of an undersized wing. Like he kind of plays more like a 3 that in terms of being a role player. He is a good spot up shooter. He's a really good help defender. He's become better on the ball, and he can occasionally handle the ball, but you're not running offense through D'Anthony Melton at any given point. You're not really trusting him to make the right plays and right reads unless he's doing like the Bruce Brown role where he's screening and rolling towards the basket and making a simple read off that short roll. But there are a few guys I have written down here that I think are like somewhat realistically acquirable this offseason. For guards that match him in the backcourt, if you want to keep Melton coming off the bench, assuming that you keep Melton for next season, I have a few guys that I think that it might take a little bit of creativity from the Sixers front office, whether that's dumping Tobias Harris, finding a third team to trade for in a Tobias Harris trade. And these guys I have here are Chris Paul, who kind of fits the bill of exactly what we're talking about. He is a little bit older, so he's not quite the defender that he once was. And he's obviously not the creator he once was. But I don't think that the difference between Chris Paul and James Harden and this version of Chris Paul is I think Chris Paul is going to be fine with the supplementary role at this point in his career. He knows his limitations. He's not going to need a ton of shots on the ball. He's become a more willing spot up 3-point shooter, and a good one. He shot 40% from 3 this past season. And I think just kind of occasionally having a guy that can run pick and roll with Joel, that can get into the mid-range, that can do the things. The only thing is he's going to compound some of the issues that the Sixers have in terms of having 0 guys who can finish around the rim, because he's just not at that age anymore. But Chris Paul, this might be in a situation where you're dumping Tobias Harris and you're getting him back along with another player, or it might be in a situation where he gets traded and then bought out by his next team and you're signing him for the mid-level exception or something like that. So that was one idea I had.
Yeah, I mean, that type of thing is more, that's like way more feasible for, that's a way more feasible type of move, just because Chris Paul is like, because that trade works like almost, I think, straight up, except for the fact that, the Suns are kind of trying to cut money or like do a 2-for-1 trade. Yeah. But the thing is, why that trade could work in a 3-way deal is because you can send Tobias Harris somewhere else. This off the top of my head, I don't think this necessarily works under the cap, but something like a Karis LeVert, Chetty Osman sign and trade to the Suns, Tobias Harris to the Cavs, and Chris Paul to the Sixers. Something like that could work.
Yeah,
and you just need a team that wants, because Tobias is actually kind of a valuable player. You just need a team.
And his contract might be valuable right now. We actually, which is weird to say. It's like, why would you had a $18 million a year role player that you're going to have to pay $20 million more a year. But as Dredd, who has come on some of the streams, he's in the Discord, he's a Celtics fan. He's also a CBA sicko, like a lot of people that we know. And every CBA person that I've talked to, Brian Toporek, Dredd, they're all like, I actually kind of think that Tobias might have positive trade value this offseason, because there are going to be teams that are looking to get off long-term money because of the new CBA. Like, for example, the Mavericks want to get rid of Tim Hardaway Jr. and Davis Bertans. The Hawks might want to get rid of the DeAndre Hunter or Bogdan Bogdanovic contract that they just signed, along with John Collins or something like that.
Yeah, that's another perfect example. Like them as a third team. Like Bertans and Hardaway to the Suns, Tobias Harris to the Mavericks. They need like just good players,
and like honestly, just like basically a better version of Dorian Finney-Smith on offense, but a worse defender, but not someone that's going to kill you on defense.
And like I don't know. I mean, I know Tobias kind of comes like his thing is more just like, doesn't really have the dog in him, but like I don't know. I was kind of impressed with Tobias in the Celtics series. I thought he acquitted himself pretty nicely. Like,
he's always fine. Yeah. If the Sixers were paying him $15 million a year, we would never hear about Tobias. And I still will always complain about the transition layups, and he did it probably 7 times in the Celtics series. By the end of the series, he was kind of figuring things out, and that was the most frustrating part as a Sixers fan. But in general, he's played fine in the playoffs. It's just that the best players didn't step up, and he makes way too much money, and it kneecaps what the team can do with other shit in terms of being flexible with their spending and stuff like that. But
right. But I think the broader point here is that, like, you're going to have more flexibility than maybe was projected with that Tobias Harris contract, which
and like the Suns were interested in John Collins. Like,
yeah,
the Hawks might take on the Tobias deal to get off the John Collins deal, and then we get Chris Paul and maybe one player, just a random rotation player from the Hawks or something.
Honestly, Tobias Harris is a better fit with like what with what they want to do than John Collins is. I think like for the Hawks team, the way they're presently constructed. I mean,
if he can't shoot threes, they need shooting, and Tobias will at least shoot 5 threes at nearly 40% from there. And then also, more importantly to me, like if I'm them, like I have a Kongu coming up. Like you can't have a Kongu, Capella, and Collins and expect it to work. They're all 3 non-shooting bigs. Like it's just you're going to run out of spots in your rotation for that if you're trying to bring him up.
Yeah, like John Collins and Bogdan Bogdanovic to the Suns, like. For the Chris Paul contract, which goes to the Sixers, that there's so many formats where that works, that the teams that would actually like to have Tobias Harris and can send multiple players to the Suns for Chris Paul. And I think, it helps the Sixers because Chris Paul teaches guys how to play, and I think he brings some of that fascist infrastructure
That's right.
I think you guys are looking for with Nick Nurse. Like, and you
Let's go. Let's go. We can have fucking multiple dictators.
Yeah, I was gonna say you can have the two. Yeah, the Roman triumvirate in the
the axis of evil in Philadelphia. Chris Paul, Joel Embiid, and Nick Nurse. they're sitting. Mussolini hit
but I don't know. I think that works pretty well, and I think we're probably, as you run through some of these ideas that you have, I think what we're going to find out is that the Tobias Harris contract is actually might end up being kind of key to getting some of this done. Because
I put it like this.
Yeah.
The Sixers are in a position where if they don't win this year, it's over. So in some capacity, at least, probably leads to Joel Embiid asking out a year from now, if he doesn't before then. So
I don't really know about that.
But either way, they have to be regardless, they have to be aggressive because James Harden's leaving.
Yes,
and Joel Embiid is in his prime. So like they can't just mess around and be like, oh, we're gonna do a retool year or whatever. Like they can take on long-term money. Like, for example, we're gonna talk about the Wizards a little bit later. If the Wizards called and said, give us Tobias Harris, DeAnthony Melton, and a way out future first for Bradley Beal. Those are the kind of things that the Sixers will probably have to consider, even if it's like, oh no, we don't want to take on the Bradley Beal contract. Then it's like, well, if Joel Embiid wants Bradley Beal and you think he's a fit, then you need to consider these kind of things because of the fact that you're just in such a desperate win now situation. You might need to take on some money that people don't want to pay down the road. But if you're possibly trading Joel Embiid a year or two from now, it's not going to really mean that much if you have a massive contract on the books, in my opinion. I just don't think that those are things you can worry. You can't worry about 2 or 3 years from now if you're trying to win a championship right now. And I don't think that kind of deal is something that's realistic, just to be clear. But like, those are the kind of things you need to consider. I have a list of some other guys I think that would fit better than a Beal type, because I just think Beal and Maxey are too redundant. I've said it before. I don't really see the fit there. I still think they need more of a pass first kind of guard or a spot up shooter. So I have a list of guys here, and some of them I know I'm going to get shit from people for. But this is kind of just like where the Sixers are at right now. Fred VanVleet is an obvious one. He's become a better passer over the years, really good shooter, capable defender. He is a free agent. There might be a pathway to getting to that cap space if you can dump Tobias Harris and take back a much less salary. It's not the cleanest fit because they're both small guards, and you probably ideally want to have someone with a little bit more size that you're putting next to Maxey. But same thing for Chris Paul as well. But I also have what happened.
So take it with a grain of salt because it's Mark Stein reporting, but Chris Haynes retweeted it. The NBA, I'm told, has opened an official review into the Twitter activity unearthed this week with the frequent mentions of veteran referee Eric Lewis.
Oh my God.
So Eric Lewis, sorry to say, RIP, our Celtics king, going down with the ship for putting his finger on the scale for us.
Wow. That's so funny. Well, for game 6? For the what was he? I don't even know if he was game 6 for the Sixers. I know that Sixers fans were complaining about him, but we did not lose that series because of refereeing. Come on. So
that's the Trill is in the pocket of big Disney media.
That's
basketball. Right. Yeah. I'll YKB fans, I'll say it. The Celtics only won because of refereeing and Adam Silver. And this is why, if you're a YKB listener, you have to vote for Ron DeSantis and his crusade against Disney and ABC and ESPN. This is what they
Please know that this is not an endorsement.
This is a joke.
Ron DeSantis in any capacity. In any capacity. We're obviously a Trump podcast. Yes, satire.
That's a parody.
So, okay. So some other names I had written down here. Yeah. I'm gonna save the 2 that I have that I know are controversial. 3 that are controversial. One is Bruce Brown, who's also going to be a free agent this offseason.
Really?
Yes.
I didn't realize his contract was that short. I mean,
he has a player option for the second year, which is why he took it.
Yeah, I was gonna say, and you bet hit your ass.
He was talking Harden up yesterday. He knows Houston has cap space. He's not stupid. Yeah. He's gonna want to get a bag. And like, if the Sixers
should get a bag, he's a great player.
He's a really good player.
Yeah.
I think you want to talk about a guy who has, he's probably a little bit too close to DeAnthony Melton to be like. There might be a little bit of redundancy and overlap there, but he's better with the ball. He can run offense more frequently. He's a really stout defender. He's great in transition. He can shoot spot up threes. He can pass. Like, that's the kind of guy that if we're only able to acquire a role player that is going next to Maxey, Bruce Brown is the kind of guy that I'm looking at for the Sixers if they're able to get a road to cap space and potentially give him like $15 million a year or whatever it is. Mm-hmm. So that's one to consider. And also maybe it makes Melton a little bit more expendable, and you can trade Melton for someone who might fit a little bit better with what you want. I would like to keep Melton, though. I like him a lot. I have Bruce Brown, also had Gabe Vincent, same concept in terms of getting a road to cap space, but the size deficiency there with those two, it might be a little bit much. But Gabe Vincent has proven that he can play in the playoffs. Bruce Brown, proven he can play in the playoffs. Fred VanVleet, proven. All these guys have proven that they can play in the playoffs and that they would be, at least in theory, a good fit with Tyrese Maxey in the backcourt. Now, these next three are three guys who have proven that they either cannot play in the playoffs or we don't know at all.
Okay.
Number one is someone that I've had many Sixers fans and DMs basically borderline threaten me for suggesting it, and that is Spencer Dinwiddie of the Nets. And I am kind of like, I know he was shitty against the Sixers. He was a role player on a conference finals team a year ago. And like, he is a spot up shooter. He shot like 40% with the Mavericks on catch and shoots. He is a willing passer. He can create his own shot. And defensively, it's kind of comes and goes. He might be fading out on that end because of like his athleticism wanes, but he's not like a horrible defender in general. So like, I know he was terrible in the Nets. What he's doing with the Sixers would not be what he was doing with the Nets, was my whole thing. So if there's any way that you can get Spencer Dinwiddie, I don't think that there's a straight up trade you can make with the Nets because the Nets just have too many Tobias Harris-like wings already. But there might be a 3-team deal where you can get a Spencer Dinwiddie type guard back and he can fit in that mold. He's a bigger guard. He's a dribble, shoot, pass guy. Like I kind of like Dinwiddie's fit with Joel and Tyrese a little bit more than other people. And then the other two guys that I had left were Kevin Porter Jr., who Kevin Porter Jr. thing is only because of the fact that if the Rockets wanna, like, I think the Rockets are just going to use their cap space to sign James Harden, but it's also possible that they could say, well, why don't we try to get more cap space and send back Kevin Porter Jr.'s contract, which starts this upcoming offseason and is non-guaranteed for like 4 years anyway. We could just send that to them. It's also possible you could just make it not guaranteed and like just move on from him. But that's at least a possibility if the Sixers send something to the Rockets, like probably not PJ Tucker or DeAnthony Melton or someone like that. But if they send anything back to the Rockets in order to get some value, Kevin Porter Jr. is at least an option. He's still 22, 23 years old. He's improved a lot. He's actually not a terrible shooter, passer. Like, he's a bit of a ball stopper, but like you could use him as like a 6-man fringe starter type.
You just send them the second that becomes available.
What do you mean?
Wait, there's going to be another one because you can only trade picks 7 years out. Another one's going to become available, so you can just send them the second round pick, and then you also get the 3 greatest words in the NBA: traded player exception.
Okay,
WPE.
Not only do you get a traded player exception, and more importantly, you could send them second round picks for their tampering that they're about to get for tampering with James Harden.
Need that. Yeah.
Here are your picks that you can literally just pay to the NBA for losing your 3 seconds or whatever it is. Like,
so that should be how they do it. Instead of someone losing picks, the team that is tampered with should get the picks that are taken, right?
Yes.
Like, I think that would be like very interesting because then you might have like the Brooklyn Nets being like, Oh, hey, Ben, don't you have to make some calls? Don't you have to make some calls, Ben? It's okay. We're not listening, but if you would like to make some calls.
I don't see or hear any of this, Ben Simmons.
Ben,
oh, you found another team? Oopsie.
Bad. Oh, I guess we just have to take those picks back. Like, oh man. He's gonna be great next to Wemby next year.
Yeah, it's gonna be so. Ben Simmons and Wemby and Jeremy Sohan. That spacing is gonna change the league.
That's like Wemby's first challenge. Like, it's like Pop giving him a trial by fire. Like, I like the worst spacing in the world.
I like what Celtics Matt said about how the Spurs aren't going to be able to build around Wemby because they don't have the market inefficiency of the NBA being xenophobic towards European players like the Spurs did for 15 years. Yeah. He was like, basically, yeah, you can't just draft Tony Parker and Manu Ginobili and Boris Diaw and all these guys.
Yeah. For years and years and years. Like they even when Marco Bellinelli showed up, he was like amazing for them.
Sure.
After like
Tiago Splitter was like fine.
Yeah.
Like their market inefficiency is now gone, and they will have to actually build a real team. Actually, I like some of their young guys, but yeah.
No, they have a new market inefficiency. Trading with athletic beat reporters writing about Houston Rockets trades.
Let's go. Keldon Johnson for the fourth pick and a future first.
Yeah, they're getting the fourth pick. They're getting the first and fourth pick for trading Keldon Johnson.
Let's go.
Let's go. I need
a contract.
Yeah. Hey, I need this is why we need to have a second league where every athletic beat reporter is the GM for their team.
I honestly would love to see if we just gave them one team, what they would cook up. Between that fake Raptors trade I saw the other day where the Raptors were trading. Well, that was weird.
Did you say your power go out?
No, my lighting just went out in here. That was weird.
Yeah, I was going to say, you said the Raptors. Trill is about to be murdered on stream. So if you want to tune in to watch the Raptors and gun him down.
Okay.
Trill is going to be murdered by some of the Six's top hired guns. Drake is you're gonna hear some Drake in the background, and then he'll come back on, and he's gonna be in his.
Unfortunately, I have no other lighting in this room. That's the only lighting I have in this room. So I will just be sitting and recording this podcast in the dark now. Thank you.
This will be a dark Trill episode.
Dark Lane demos. That's a Drake project. So, so yeah. To wrap this up, basically, we have. I had a few other. The other option I had that I knew people would hate was D'Angelo Russell on the MLE, which I suggested the other day. But it sounds like he's going to go back to the Lakers for some reason. Once again, I said it was the perfect Morey move because he is he's a regular season player who falls off in the playoffs, which is one of Morey's favorite archetypes. He's a guy who's out, everyone's out on, and he can dribble, shoot, and pass, which is what the Sixers need. So that was my idea for that. I ultimately think that there might be a few wing options that you could get with Maxey. The guys that I had written down as long shots were Chris Middleton, if the Bucks don't want to pay him, Bojan Bogdanovic, and from the Pistons, and that would be in some sort of Tobias Harris trade, and also in some sort of Tobias Harris trade, DeMar DeRozan. But I just don't think that those guys, I think those guys are all of them except for Middleton are probably too on ball to really fit with Maxey and Embiid, but they at least would provide, Bojan would provide spot up shooting and some supplementary passing, and DeMar would be, an on-ball scorer type. I think that they need guys that will be willing to shoot threes. So those are my ideas of guys you can put with Tyrese Maxey to maximize him next year. What ultimately you're going to need is a creative coach, no matter what, in order to really maximize Maxey, get him going off the ball, and kind of help him hit his ceiling. Because my thing is, I talked about it like this. I would look at what the Jazz did with Donovan Mitchell and what the Nuggets did with Jamal Murray. Because those are the two players I think that if Maxey's trying to hope that he can get to the point where he's never going to be like the pure point guard, but he might be the combo guard that's a really good scorer and becomes an improved playmaker and ball handler over the years. And like Mitchell's actually become a decent playmaker. Like obviously Jamal Murray's playing with Jokic, so that makes things a lot easier, but he's also become an improved playmaker over the years. And they're never going to be 10 assist guys, but they're 5 assist guys. They're 6 assist guys. This is the range that Maxey should be looking to get towards. And since he's going to be he's such an electric scorer, the playmaking will always be secondary. And we just need to hope that in this next year or two, he can reach kind of that level and become an all-star level player, which is, I think, what ultimately his destiny is as a guard in this league. So that's all I have about Maxey, but those are just some thoughts on maximizing him.
You didn't say the one I thought you were going to say.
Who?
Which could be available for very cheap in Kyle Lowry.
Absolutely not. No.
He's out on Kyle Lowry.
Well, I guess you could say the same thing about Chris Paul, but like he's just so like last night he was, and I know that he's had some good games in the playoffs, so I'm not going to say, but like I just went through the James Harden experience of like one game he's great and then the next game he's terrible. And that it's just the Lowry experience. He's so old.
But the thing is, well, that's the thing is he's a negative asset. You know what I'm saying?
Sure.
Like you know what I'm saying? Like, so that's something where you're getting like a 2-for-1. Like you're getting Kyle Lowry and a player. You know what I'm saying? For
if we could get like Max Strus in a side and trade or Gabe Vincent or someone like that, I would certainly. I mean,
I would just try to pay Gabe Vincent.
Yeah. It's possible. I mean, he might get more than the MLE, and if we don't have a road to cap space, that can get complicated. But as we have been saying, it feels like Gabe Vincent's destiny is to go to the Detroit Pistons and just suck. So, like every other Miami player who leaves just end up sucking on another team.
He's not a second draft guy, though.
No. He wasn't drafted.
It'd be like Nickeil Alexander-Walker would end up on the
Pistons. And then being terrible.
Yeah. Terrible. Yeah.
No, but every Miami player leaves and sucks. Like at some point,
he's gonna fucking end up on the Spurs, man, and like be part of their linchpin. Some shit like that.
I could see that.
And like their immediate rebuild is gonna be like.
They'll be contenders in 2 years. It will be very.
I will say it will be really fun if like the Spurs are immediately good next year, and we get like Spurs Thunder just becomes a rivalry for like who's going to be like the dynasty for like 10 years. Like
that would be cool. I mean, it's so funny because of all the teams, it's like, man, they have so many good second and third guys there that I'm like, oh man, like Vassell's a great second option immediately. Yeah. You're like, oh cool, great. We already have the second option. They'll probably keep Keldon Johnson just because his contract's so good, but like everyone wants wings, and like if you can be a little bit flexible because they're trying to develop so many like scoring wings and big guards like Blake Wesley and Malachi Branham and all the guys that they just drafted, it's possible that Keldon Johnson ends up being expendable. But I do think the Spurs are going to be really good, like really fast. But that's the end of this portion. We're going to get into the Celtics possibly doing the thing and making NBA history, of course. And then we're also going to get into we're going to riff on some things, including the Wizards possibly rebuilding finally. And then Bill Simmons and Michael Lombardi, we're finally going to talk about that and how they recorded the worst podcast of all time. So subscribe to the You Know Ball Patreon. The link is in the description. I will be sitting here in the dark as we record. So let's go.